let's hear about openness from two leaders of the industry. You guys already know, Dean Takahashi here. Let's bring to the stage Tim Sweeney. He's founder and CEO of Epic Games, the company behind the Unreal Engine, as well as Epic games such as Gears of War, Unreal Tournament, Infinity Blade, and Fortnite. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Sweeney.
Thanks, Tim. Well, that talk with Robbie brought back some memories. I think I remember way back when you were suggesting to Microsoft rather publicly that they double the amount of memory in the Xbox 360 because it wasn't going to be enough if they only had 256 or something, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right, we built an analysis showing side by side what the two cases would look like, and they did the right thing. It shows the Microsoft has an awesome capability for flexibility there that I've seen several times over the past few decades that are just amazing. You know, that was $1 billion decision, and they were like, okay, it's right for developers, it's right for products, we'll do it.
So that's a little context for, I guess, the current status of things, I guess. You recently took on Microsoft publicly, again, criticizing the Universal Windows platform. What's this really about, I guess?
Well, Microsoft has been taking a series of steps for a while now towards closing down the Windows ecosystem, forcing at least consumer versions of Windows to go through Microsoft Commerce. You know, they can't do it all at once because there would be an industry uproar and people wouldn't buy the new operating system. But one little step at a time, they're trying to take it all over. UWP is one step in that direction. It's a more closed Windows subsystem that has some operating system features that are not available to normal apps. When Windows launched, it was closed. Now they've opened up parts of it, but there's no long-term future commitment. Yeah, and for a company like Epic, I've been copying floppy disks and sending them out in the mail to Epic customers for 25 years now, starting in 1991. The absolute most important thing for all of us in this room, I think, is our ability to have a direct relationship with our customers, to build a business and sell our products to them. And it would be the most ridiculous tragedy if the result of the digital distribution revolution were that Walmart and Best Buy and all these other giant retailers were replaced by Microsoft, Apple, and Valve. I think it's really critical that we fight to maintain the openness of the key platforms in our industry.
So Valve brought this up with Windows 8, I guess, right? That they were worried about Microsoft closing down a platform, and they started Steam machines, I guess. So this is kind of ringing a bell, I guess, with you.
Yeah, that's right. But the problem with Linux, it's a fine operating system, but it lacks the billion consumers that Windows has. Windows is the platform of choice for hardcore gamers, and it's the only choice for enterprise. If we want to have open platforms there, we've got to fight to keep Windows open, and Linux is not a realistic fallback plan.
So you could have done this privately, I guess.
Well, I spent 18 months emailing, meeting, and badgering Microsoft executives, talking to them about this behind the scenes. And there are a lot of great people at Microsoft who share this idea that Windows should be open. But there are also some bean counters here and there, and they've been unable to make any sort of commitment to whether UWP will be open or closed.
Now, I went to Microsoft Build, and Microsoft made a point to invite me to that this year, and at least 3 executives, including the CEO, talked about openness, but it wasn't quite exactly what you're looking for.
Well, on stage at Build, Phil Spencer said that the Xbox is an open platform, which surprises me because you have to get your game concept approved before you can start developing it. And then you have to get every update approved. And Microsoft has absolute control. And guess what? You don't know who your customers are. It's sold, they sell it through their store, your game, and it's not your platform. And so I think they're just in propaganda mode at that point. But we really have to look at, are the key mechanisms there for Windows to remain an open platform? And whenever Microsoft tries to impose some technology change on us, we should be very careful to defend our businesses, which rely on direct relationships.
Now, what has some of the reaction been like as far as the range of reaction you've gotten to this? I heard some myself, but I wanted to hear what you've heard as well, I guess.
Well, a huge number of developers share this sentiment, but most of them do not want to take on a $400 billion corporation. I've been told it's a bad idea, like just FYI.
Yeah.
But everybody fears this, and what we're seeing right now is nobody's adopting UWP except for the small number of developers that Microsoft is paying to adopt UWP. And the same thing with the Windows Store in Windows 8.1. It's kind of a dump bin of ports of Android mobile games to Windows that Microsoft paid for. If you search for GTA in the Windows Store, there's like this mobile GTA game. Like, where is GTA? It's the #1 game on the PC of all time, and it's not there.
I think some reaction I've heard is that you're kind of pointing out a subtle threat that could come in the future. And so technically, there's sort of not a universal reaction of you're right and they're wrong. Sort of, it's more, I don't exactly see what Tim is talking about sometimes. David Helgeson at Unity, he's a competitor. He doesn't have a reason to agree with you, but he did say that he favors openness, but he doesn't exactly see the crisis right now, I guess.
There's a funny story about boiling a frog. If you throw and don't try this at home, I like frogs, but if you throw a frog in boiling water, he'll just top out. He's like, okay, this is boiling. But if you put him in warm water and you slowly ramp up the temperature, then he'll not notice, and he will be boiled. But a lot of frogs in the industry have already been boiled. Like, look at Facebook. Every brand in the world put their brand presence on Facebook, started sending out messages that their customers could receive. And then at some point, that kind of changed. Now you have to pay for your messages to be received by the people who chose to follow you. Boiling a frog. With Windows, now Microsoft has given itself the ability to force patch updates without your authorization. It will just update itself, and you can't do anything about it. So they can change the rules of the game at any time. They've already launched this operating system with UWP. They call it sideloading now because it's like other stores are not official. They've already launched the operating system with that disabled. They force patched it to enabled. They say a lot of things about openness, but they want us to play this game with them by porting all of our apps to this new platform, and they are not telling us what the rules of the game are, and they're reserving the right to change the rules at any time. Well, I don't think they're going to change them to our favor. That's my fear here.
So I think you have every single platform maker in the room here. Wow. So I wonder, what is your message to them? Like, what do they need to know about openness, I guess?
Well, I would point out that the PC has been, as an open platform, has been the most vibrant platform in the world. The GPU revolution started there well before Microsoft adopted it. Remember, we had 3D effects with Glide and all of this innovation that Microsoft eventually rolled up into the platform through DirectX. But if that had relied on Microsoft initiative and Microsoft had actively blocked external drivers and apps supporting new things that they didn't approve, it never would have happened. The VR revolution that's happening now, HTC Vive and Oculus, well, there's no direct VR interface from Microsoft. If you were trying to make that work within the UWP ecosystem they're proposing, it would have never happened. So open platforms encourage innovation. And whenever you have a closed platform and a monopoly on commerce and all of these platform rules, it stifles it. I mean, look at what iOS has grown into. It's
I was going to ask you about, if you feel this way about Microsoft, how do you feel about Apple?
Well, Apple's an awesome company, and they get a free ride from consumers because their platform is so great, and it's virus-free, and people tend to associate that with the fact that it is a walled garden. But I think the truth of the matter is Apple's OS has awesome security and sandboxing that ensures that an app you run cannot possibly turn itself into a virus. It's not the fact that they're forcing all commerce to go through their store that makes it secure. It's that OS design. And so that's a good thing. I think the closedness is bad, but what we have now is John Riccatello of Unity released a stat, which really amazed me. He said there were 400,000 Unity games being released in the past year. 400,000 games. But I don't think anybody who's not in the top 500 on iOS is able to run a business off of that. And so you have this closed platform. It has a top 20, and if you're not on the top 20, then your sales fall off very radically. So you have one app store, you have one model of publicizing apps, and I feel like it's failing a very large percentage of the developers out there. Whereas on Windows with Steam, that tail is much longer, and there are a much larger number of developers producing successful games. And the fall off from number 1 to number 2 and number 3 is not nearly as steep.
And they're not all paying their 30% to Apple, I guess, right? So.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the other funny coincidence, not a conspiracy, a coincidence that every store in the world charges 30%. Steam, iOS, Android, all of them, 30% across the board. You'd think that this would be a parameter where people were trying to compete economically to make their platform more attractive or to be stingier, but we're not seeing any competition there whatsoever. Whereas if these were open platforms and there were more competitors, I think that would change.
So Tim's a versatile guy. We have other subjects for you as well. The game market's sort of divided between mobile, PC, and console. How do you expect this to change in the next decade?
Well, it's funny how this has evolved. You start out with a PC with a pretty big monitor, and then we went down to these mobile devices. So it's like we reset expectations back to the 1990s with 2D sprite-based games, and we've been growing mobile games ever since. It was kind of a weird inversion for the game industry, but I think the absolute opposite trend is now starting to happen with AR and VR. If you look at a PC monitor, that takes up 30 degrees of your field of view, pretty good. Smartphone, 15 degrees. It makes for a much more limited experience. But VR and AR filling your entire field of view in an immersive experience will lead to a much more visceral and believable experience than ever before. I think that will be the most competitive and innovative platform ever launched. And we're going to reinvent all user interface paradigms, game paradigms, the future of media and entertainment. I think movies and the format and technology powering movies will be completely reinvented around these new media. And so I really would expect it's not going to happen instantly. How many VR headsets are there out now for high-end VR? 30,000, 40,000? But the point is that number is going to double, triple, or quadruple every year from now on, up to the point where it might reach 250 million units in 7 years. And then augmented reality, much harder technology to implement, but far more fundamental. I can imagine reducing VR to the form factor of your Oakley sunglasses and having a pervasive entertainment device that has all the power of a VR with a high-end PC, with the convenience of a smartphone or beyond. I think that's going to be revolutionary, and it's going to bring gaming to billions of users, and not just gaming in the sense of playing these little smartphone games on your little tablet in front of you, but fully immersive, high-end, visceral gaming. And
we won't need our displays anymore as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, once you have this sort of augmented reality device, imagine like an 8K display per eye, then you can put screens anywhere you want and watch any media on any surface and not need a television, a monitor, smartphone screen, or anything else.
Movie theater. Yeah.
Right? It will change entertainment pretty fundamentally. And not just that. It's not just another display screen, but it's a fully interactive media technology. And these future movies that are built for VR will have to be running in real time on your machine so that you can move around, participate. The pace of the experience can change dynamically. It's going to be an entirely new world.
So what do you think is going to carry VR, though, between, say, now and 2026, right?
Well, I think we're going to have a very viable VR market for developers in about 2.5 years. In the meantime, it's powered by indies, enthusiasm, investments from bigger companies. They're experimenting with small VR experiences. You can't ship a big hit when there are only 40,000 units available, but it is such a good investment right now to be building teams, investing in VR. If you can afford to do so, I highly encourage that, because it's going to redefine entertainment, and the teams that have the experience now are going to be the first innovators when it becomes practical.
So you did mention that you were under NDA at Magic Leap, but what they're doing is pretty amazing. Yeah,
I think it's important to realize we're all experienced with VR. VR is just built out of regular consumer hardware that's been repurposed. Palmer Luckey duct taped the first Oculus together. And now they're manufacturing it as a consumer product. But it's all technology that's existed for a long time. But with augmented reality, we're going to need an entire new repertoire of building blocks for this, including waveguide optics, basically science fiction optical technology, where you print holograms on a small glass surface, and the holograms contain millions of microscopic mirrors, and then that redirect light throughout the device to place it in the right location. That and all sorts of other display technologies required to, really what we want to do is combine seamlessly the real world behind you, which you see through your regular eyes on a transparent surface, with computer-generated imagery, basically with an alpha channel letting you blend between the two. So you can have computer-generated imagery that can properly occlude relative to objects in the real world, which means you need incredible innovations in output, in the devices used to display, and input. So you can scan the environment around you, figure out the objects there, the depths, and you can place virtual objects relative to the real objects.
So I wanted to ask you what this all means for game engines, but note first that John Carmack, one of your main peers and rivals in the industry, was a big game engine guy as well, and he saw this coming too, and he said, "Hey, the hell with it! I'm going to go make some of this stuff." Right? He's at Oculus. Have you had this temptation?
Oh, I'm tempted to build lots of things like that. I'd like to build a flying car, but I should probably stick to my core expertise.
So what's it going to mean for game engines, I guess?
Well, the move to virtual reality and augmented reality creates expectations. Your brain inherently expects realism in that environment, especially if you're going to blend virtual objects in a real scene. Your eye's not going to tolerate flat shaded or any sorts of uncanny valley artifacts. So we need huge investments in super optimized technology to display 120 frames per second plus, in recreating digital characters. At the Facebook F8 conference, Mike Schroepfer did one of the first demos of VR social, where two people were wearing VR headsets in different locations and chatting back and forth, and you could see their head and their hands tracking. But just that, 3 objects. But the next step is we need to track your entire facial motion and be able to recreate it from any angle, along with your entire body motion, so that you can have shared virtual worlds. What we talk about for the metaverse.
The demo of Hellblade at GDC was pretty awesome.
Oh, thanks a lot. It's just barely on the cusp and been demonstrated that it's possible to do this real-time facial motion capture with enormously complex and expensive rigs of custom hardware. The next step is to consumerize it, reduce it down to mainstream, and put this in every headset so that you have outward-facing cameras scanning the environment, inward-facing cameras scanning you, and be able to render these very realistic characters in a real-world environment and get on the other side of Uncanny Valley, because until we're there, it's going to be a very awkward medium.
Well, anybody got a question for Tim?
Tim, the demo of Unreal Engine working in VR at GDC was the first VR application I've seen that I felt could drive people to run out and buy hardware right away. What's your response been to that? Are you seeing some uptake of that?
Oh, thanks. Are you talking about the VR editor? Oh, yeah. There are a huge number of enthusiasts experimenting with it now.
And that's like designing a game inside VR.
Yeah. So you're in VR. You can walk around your environment at real scale, or you can pinch to zoom, just like on iOS, but in 3D with the motion controller. Zoom the world down to a tiny size, and now it's a little model on your desk that you can manipulate with the controllers. Zoom it back, place objects, move them around. It's like if you've ever tried using CAD software, you know that it's really hard and not at all fun. But you already know how to use the VR Unreal Editor because you've been doing this sort of stuff all your life. It's like playing with a Barbie doll house or building a garage. There's a huge amount of experimentation with it in the community, and I think there's a lot of work, but over the course of the next year or couple of years, I think we're going to see a very large percentage of all content editing done within VR, both for VR and for traditional content, because the productivity gains and just the productivity and ability to visualize as you're building are so much higher.
You think that's way non-coders, high school students, kids could actually learn to design games?
I think kindergartners could use this technology, as opposed to CAD experts. I think that's where it's ultimately heading, and that's the goal, to create some continuum between high-end professional game tools and user-generated content like that, the metaverse.
Time for one more? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. My question is beyond vision, mission, and impact. What is your one dream which you really want to accomplish in your lifetime through VR and AR?
Well, yeah, I think that goes back to the very first game I created in 1991. Epic's mission has always been not only to create games, but to create technology that enables other people to create their own environments. And right now that takes the form of a fairly high-end professional tool, the Unreal Editor. But we really want to bring this content creation ability to everybody in the world, just as Minecraft has done with really low-fidelity voxel editing. You know, Minecraft brought in 25 million, or 50 million now, 3D content creators. And they want to move on. They want to build bigger, better, and more realistic things. And I would love to be able to enable everybody to have tools that are as easy to use as that, but scale to creating photorealistic worlds, and let them do all that together in a social, shared, collaborative environment. That's kind of been like, you know, as a game programmer building games, you know, you go to sleep and you have dreams about games. The dream has always been that. Everybody's in it, it's all together, it's shared, and it's incredibly powerful and incredibly realistic. It's going to take a while, so I think I have job security.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much.
Great.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Ian.